Oh no, you did not read the title wrong. I'm here to defend The Grinch. Yes, as in 2018's The Grinch, the movie made by the guys who made the Minions. The movie that not a lot of people like. But with Christmas right around the corner, I'm going to explain why I actually love this movie. And I'm going to do so by comparing The Grinch to a movie that I absolutely despise, made by the exact same people based on the exact same author's work. And I'm talking about The Lorax. Ugh, sorry, this movie makes me feel a little bit nauseous thinking about it. Now, I'm just going to go off the bat and say, if you like any of these movies, or if you hate any of these movies, that's totally fine. Feel free to express your opinions just like how I'm going to express mine. I also will point out that this will have spoilers for both movies. Now I know what you're thinking. What spoilers? These are Dr. Seuss movies. We know how the books end.
Correct!
But of course, with them being movies, there are going to be changes to the plot and the progression. Some things that maybe you don't want to be spoiled on. And I will be covering a lot of these changes because I do know what the movies did that the books didn't, because I am quite a bit of a Dr. Seuss fan. The Lorax actually is my favorite childhood book of all time, which makes me despise the movie even more. Okay, I'm going to be breaking down these movies into 4 different categories: visuals, music, story, and then characters. The reason why I'm talking about characters last is because they are what makes or breaks these kinds of movies. The Grinch and The Lorax are very character-driven books, The Lorax especially. If you screw those up, you're screwing up every single aspect of the story. So let's cut to it and talk about visuals. In terms of the looks department, both movies have their high and low points. However, The Grinch is more consistently high than The Lorax. Both have a lot in common. The character designs are pretty loyal to the source material. All the machines have this quirkiness that live up to the traditional Seuss standard. And when aspects from the book are being taken into the movie, they look pretty bang on. But there's the problem. When it's taken from the book, a good majority of The Lorax does not focus on the original book's story. And the tone, the vibe, the overall atmosphere is far too different, and it just feels wrong. Its modern aspect is too on the nose, and it doesn't fit with the happiness and cheeriness of the past, or the gloominess and darkness of the present that's represented in the book itself. And this translates to the original character designs that take place during this portion of the movie. It's unoriginal and bland. How they look is essentially like any other Illumination movie. Now, I would have let it slide if it wasn't for The Grinch, which struck a much better balance. It's consistently in the world of the book. It's consistently in Whoville. As such, there's no sudden disconnect, and you're immersed into the world. The same translates to the character designs. They still have that Illumination charm, but they're really stubby or really lanky, just like Who's. It strikes that balance of creative liberty and being accurate to the source material. I'm also going to point out that, especially compared to the live-action Grinch, the colors really, really pop out in this one. As it should. It's Christmas. Color is kind of incredibly important to the holiday, you know? So yeah, The Grinch already has The Lorax trumped in this category. Let's move on to music. So, The Lorax is a musical in this movie. I have no idea why. There's no thematic benefit for making the movie a musical. It just really pads out the running time. This is a movie about taking responsibility and trying to save the environment. Do you really need to sing about it? Yet, ironically, even though a big plot point in The Grinch is singing, it's not a musical. There is original songs made for this movie, but you don't see characters suddenly break out in song. Now, I'm making this sound like I'm against musicals, which I'm not. It's just something worth pointing out. But are the songs good? And this is where things get a little weird. The Lorax's original music is as bland and generic as Thneedville itself. The songs are not at all memorable. The only reason one of them have any sort of staying power is because it's some sort of a meme. That's not saying it's good. That's like saying if Attack of the Clones is a masterpiece because it gave us a couple memorable lines about sand. The Grinch at the very least gave us a rendition of a song that's an actual classic. And while you can argue that the song is inferior, which I agree, it's not as intrusive as how the Lorax treats its own songs. Not to mention that chunks of the movie still use some good old classic Christmas tunes. Sure, you can say it's unimpressive because it's public domain, but at least it thematically makes sense. The Who's down in Whoville really like Christmas, and you know what a lot of people do when they celebrate Christmas? They listen and sing to classic songs. And that's played to the movie's advantage to emphasize Whoville's excitement for the holiday. There's actually a scene where the Grinch is being chased down by a bunch of carolers. That's actually great. Obviously, another point to the Grinch. Its songs make sense in terms of the theme of the movie, and it's not too intrusive, while the Lorax tries to cram these unimpressive numbers down your throat. On to talking about the story. Do I even need to explain why the Grinch wins? Now, I understand the task of adapting a Dr. Seuss book is hard. You have to take a book which doesn't have a lot of pages, and you gotta make it into a feature-length film. I can't imagine how difficult that task is. You have to pad the story out to maintain the running time. I get it. The difference between the Lorax and the Grinch is that one pads things out just to be filler, while the other pads things out to expand the story and the themes. Plus, in the case of the Lorax, that filler actually destroyed the original message. For the Grinch, the story is pretty much like the books. The Grinch hates Christmas, and so he's going to try to steal all the gifts and decorations to hope it would put a stop to the holiday. Like the live-action movie, there's focus on why the Grinch hates Christmas in terms of looking at his backstory, as well as a focus on the character Cindy Lou Who. I do prefer the backstory that they gave in this film, but I do have to admit that it didn't get as much screen time as I thought it should. While the original movie did make more of an impression, although it did feel a little too obnoxious. The plotline with Cindy Lou Who is enjoyable, and it really does tie into the Grinch's later development. That's really the core as to why this movie works. Everything from beginning to end contributes to the Grinch's development. So when we finally get to the climax of the Who's singing, it's going to make sense as to why the Grinch's heart changes. While in the others, his change was just kind of sudden. There is another aspect of this I want to get into, but that's once we get to the characters category. Alright, let's rip the Lorax to parts again. Why do we need Sneedville? Why do we need another villain? Isn't the whole point of the Lorax is that we're the villain here? By taking the unnamed boy from the books that's supposed to be a representation about the purest form of ourselves, and turning him into just some boy who's trying to impress this girl who likes trees so much, it just ruins everything that the book is trying to stand for and tell us. The book is about the Onceler, the personification of human greed, telling the next generation to not go down the path he did. But because we can no longer identify with Ted, and I'm going to mention that we can no longer identify with the Onceler, it just makes the entire message pointless. It loses all resonance. Because we can no longer project ourselves into anyone or anything in the movie, it just feels like a film, which is actually two separate films, both being empty in their own special way. And don't get me started with the Lorax coming back. That's the biggest slap in the face you could do. It's the cherry on top of the garbage sundae. Sure, it gives the story closure, but you know what the problem is? The Lorax isn't supposed to have closure. The ending of the book is supposed to be ambiguous. Why? Because it's all up to you. The fate of the Lorax, the fate of the planet, is up to you. That is what Dr. Seuss intended. The only way the Lorax would have any sort of closure is when the Earth is finally protected and the environment is safe. It's literally written in stone, like a prophecy. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. This is absolutely why the Grinch succeeds. While the Lorax just spits in the face of what the book originally stands for, the Grinch at least enhances it. This leads us to the final category, characters. The characters in terms of quality can range from passable, to pointless, to obnoxious, to downright terrible. The Lorax is probably the one passable character here. The Barbaloots, the Swami Songs, all those other sorts of animals that were in the book pretty much just serve as obnoxious minion replacements. After all, Dr. Seuss did want Mission Impossible references in his movies, right? The rest of the original characters are just boring, generic, and just leave no impression on you whatsoever, especially O'Hare. All you see him as is some greedy, generic bad guy who you can't identify with, even though the point of the Lorax is to identify with the bad guy. How about the original baddie, the Onceler? All he wanted to do was to just sell a couple things, chop down a couple trees. He didn't mean no harm, he just needed to get a little bit of profit. You need resources to start a business, and you gotta make money to survive. It's not inherently bad yet, but of course the Onceler has his success go to his head, and he thinks that maybe he'll just cut down a couple more trees, maybe build a couple more factories. It's gonna be okay, it's not gonna ruin the forest or anything, he just needs to expand a bit. In the cartoon, he even argues with himself, wondering if what he's doing is even right. In the end, he chooses to follow his ambitions, ultimately resulting in the world becoming a desolate wasteland after the last tree is cut. Now he lives sad and alone, wishing he could start over. And the awesome thing is that you don't see his face. You know what that means, right? It's supposed to be you. By not seeing his face, you could picture yourself in his shoes. And the movie decides to go, that's pretty cool, it's clever, revolutionary for a children's book. Let's not do any of that. I understand for the movie, maybe you do have to show his face. He is your protagonist after all. Well, he would have been a protagonist if it weren't for that stupid subplot with Ted. I already got into that. And it would be clever and unique filmmaking to have a whole movie where you don't see the protagonist's face at all. It's pretty unprecedented for an animated film. But his face? Fine. I'll take it. There's a lot more problems with him anyway. Mostly due to the fact that he's not driven by relatable greed, he's driven by peer pressure. It's not the Wansler's fault that he killed the forest, it was his greedy family. I guess if we don't have any of those, we'll never turn into the Wansler, so it's fine. Pollute all you want, it's not gonna make a difference. What about the inner struggle, the slow progression to selfishness that we all have? We might as well have a musical number. I'm pretty sure that's fine. Sing one song and you're a totally different character. Who needs depth? Sure, you could feel sorry for him in the end, but that's only half the battle. If you can't relate to him, then the Lorax has no meaning. It's supposed to be a warning to you. The characters in the Lorax, they ruined the movie. But how about the Grinch? Let's get the smaller characters off the bat first. Cindy Lou Who. She's adorable. What I like is that she also conveys the idea that Christmas is more than just gifts before the actual end of the movie. So when she shares her goals with the Grinch when he eventually crashes into her house, it just further develops the character. This is what I mean when the Grinch had a change of heart, it feels less sudden. The same goes for Max the dog and even Fred the reindeer. In the past, the Grinch kinda treats Max like a sort of slave. Of course, that's done on purpose to make the Grinch seem unlikable. In this movie, while their personalities clash a bit and they get into some sort of, well, can you really call it arguments if the dog doesn't talk? But they do get into some sort of fights, but you can see that the Grinch does care for Max. It makes the Grinch seem less of a one-note baddie and still have a bit more depth into him, yet totally not sacrificing the fact that yes, the Grinch still hates Christmas and he still wants to steal it. Yet his relationship with Max gives him that morality that helps out in the final act. How about Fred the reindeer, huh? When this movie's trailers was coming out, I was terrified of this character. He's not from the book, and he looks to be minion-esque comic relief, sort of like how the animals were in the Lorax. He looks like your typical Illumination kid pandering garbage. But man, were the trailers so misleading. Fred is only in the movie for like 3 or so minutes, and his contributions is not just pointless comedy, he actually helps develop the Grinch. The Grinch captures him so he can be a reindeer for his sleigh, but eventually, the Grinch decides to let him go after realizing that Fred's family is actually looking for him. This pays off in the final act when Fred actually comes back with his family to save the Grinch when he was trying to rescue the presents that are falling off a cliff. Sam, Max, and Fred were the characters that pretty much helped the Grinch grow. But of course, some people did say that that's the problem. People don't like this interpretation of the Grinch because he's too nice. Where's the hyperactive grouch that was Jim Carrey's Grinch? Where's the sinister schemer that was Boris Karloff's Grinch? And to that I say, I don't care. We've seen 2 interpretations of this sort of Grinch already. Did we really need a third? If Illumination wanted this movie to stand out from the others, they needed to make some changes. And unlike the Lorax where the changes were padding and just felt like a detriment, the Grinches actually expand the story and it actually feels better. And the thing is, the core of the message that Dr. Seuss wants to convey is still there. Except now the Grinch has more nuance, more depth, more emotions. You relate to him. Illumination managed to take one of the most one-note baddies in literature and actually made him a compelling, relatable character. The Grinch spent his whole life alone without a family. He believed that nobody would ever be there for him. That's why he hates Christmas. It just serves as a reminder that he'll always be alone. The only sort of solace he had was in his dog. And you certainly can't have a compelling, fascinating conversation with your dog, can you? All of these character enhancements culminate into what I believe is the biggest surprise of the whole movie. The ending. Now, y'all might be thinking I might be smoking something. I mean, the ending to The Grinch is surprising? We all know how it goes. The Grinch delivers the presents, carves the roast beast, boom bam boom, the end. That's where they throw you for a loop. The Grinch does deliver the presents, but we don't just cut to him being accepted and carving the roast beast. Oh no. The Grinch is actually so ashamed that he leaves. That change of heart didn't just make him all happy hunky-dory. No, he also felt full remorse. He went straight back to isolation. He had to be cordially invited to a Christmas party by Cindy Lou to even walk out. And when he makes it to the party, it's awkward, it's slow, but he tries to be the nicest he could be to the people that were willing to accept him back in. His awkwardness in that scene just felt so natural, as he came to understand and open his eyes that people are willing to accept him, that he is not alone. That scene was honestly just beautiful, and it made me feel that, yeah, this movie's great. Illumination got everything right. It fixed all the problems I had with the Lorax years ago. It was beautiful, the music had purpose, the story was loyal to the original, but made enough changes, especially to its characters, to make things go beyond my expectations. If you're looking for a great Christmas movie to see with your family this holiday season, I implore you, go see this movie. Even if Christmas passed, buy the Blu-ray, see it next year. Just give this movie a chance. That's all I have to say for now. I'll see you next time.
We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry